Hi everyone, welcome back to Katie's Confections. I'm here today because we got a bunch of peaches at the farmer's market, I don't know, last week. And so if you can see, they're a little wrinkly, not so great for just eating fresh, but that means they're perfect for baking or making jams, those kinds of things. So I'm just going to use these up and make a peach cobbler in my cast iron skillet I have right here. Okay, so the recipe is calling for a large can of sliced peaches, 29 ounces. I don't buy canned peaches typically, and right now I have fresh, obviously, so we are going to use fresh peaches. So don't be afraid of that. If a recipe says, it calls for something that's canned, or be afraid to just use your own. Now I'm just going to peel these, and I'm using my large groove cutting board today. You can see this, it's got this little, I call it like a moat. I guess it'd be a moat if it was full of water, but great for cutting fruits and watermelons and things that hold a lot of water, because this groove along the edge will actually catch all that juice, and so it doesn't end up all over your counter, or worse, all over the floor, because that can happen sometimes too. These peaches are really soft, but again, it doesn't matter. They may not be great to eat fresh, but they're the ones that will make the best cobblers and the best pies. So I'm just going to peel them all. And then I'm just going to slice them up, and they don't have to be perfect, they don't have to be even, but a peach slice like you would get out of the can. So I'm just throwing them into my stainless steel bowl. However, I'm going to, because it's calling for ounces, it's a lot easier to measure if you have a kitchen scale. So you can see I have the Pampered Chef kitchen scale. This is an older version. Spoiler alert, if you stick around in the fall, you might be able to get an upgraded version of this, just saying. But I've had this for quite some time and didn't use it a lot. I actually use it for mailing and postage more than I used it in my kitchen. But then when I was diagnosed with diabetes and we had to start measuring everything, some of the measurements a lot of the measurements are in ounces or grams, and so it's hard to calculate if I'm just using cups and things like that. So we've started using this a lot more. But the great thing is you can put your bowl, whatever you're using, on it and then zero it out. So the scale now knows how much the bowl weighed. So now I can fill it up and I will have an accurate account of how many ounces of peaches I have when I'm all done peeling. Well, that is practically right on the money. So we are at 28.7 ounces. The recipe calls for 29. That sounds perfect to me. Okay, so according to the recipe, we're going to pour our peaches into our skillet. Oh, that looks delicious already. And this is one of our Pampered Chef cast irons, and I love these because, one, they come pre-seasoned. I had an older set, it took me years to get it where I wanted it. But then when this one came out from Pampered Chef and they sent it to me, I gave mine away because ours have short handles on them, which is great because you don't have that long handle. First of all, cast irons are hard to store because they're huge. The handle's long. And they're heavy, so you can't store them in the back of the cabinet. They're too hard to get out, but because ours have two short handles, they're much easier to store, and they're much easier just to use and maneuver. I don't feel like I have to use two hands on one long handle, try to move it around, so love that. And then it called for a cup of butter. Melted. So I use my silicone prep bowls. These are great because, again, you can squeeze these so you don't have to worry about getting butter or whatever you're pouring all over the place, but it just wants us to drizzle this over the peaches. That's a lot of butter. However, I am sure it will be delicious. Grab a spatula. Just a little bit of butter in the bottom that didn't quite melt. I love this little mini mix and scrape. It's one of my favorite spatulas. It's good for everything. Eggs, everything. Okay, so we've got our peaches in here with our butter. Can't tip it now because there's butter in there. But we're going to just set that aside for now. And then it wants us to mix sugar, flour, milk, baking powder, basically everything else that's in this recipe. And I just found this recipe on Yumly. You do have to be careful with that website. People don't always post the correct nutritional information, so I always figure mine out on my own, just based on the ingredients. I just find it to be more accurate. Counting also the medium-sized mix and scrape, these are great, because if you notice, there's a little bit of an indentation here, so they're more like a scoop or a spoon, so they're great for mixing batters and things. Really everything, anything you would possibly want to mix. So we need 2 cups of sugar. Just put that in our little stainless steel mixing bowls. These are great too. If you notice they have a hole in here, this is for your thumb. So like I'm baking cookies, it's very easy to hold it up to dump things into the mixer. Like my flour, usually my dry ingredients I mix first. It's just good to hold on to. There's also rubber on the bottom, so they don't slide, get away from you while you're mixing, in case you really get into it. It's calling for 2 cups of flour. Now, because this might sound silly because I'm making peach cobbler, but because I have to account for all my carbs, I'm going to use half gluten-free and half regular all-purpose flour. And I just did that because at one point we weren't able to get flour at the store here when everything started, and so I'm trying to use this up because it does not taste like regular flour. I'm just going to mix my sugar and my flour up a little bit, especially because I use 2 different kinds just to make sure we're evenly distributed. Okay. Then we need 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So I have 2 different Pampered Chef measuring spoons, and I use them all. I do bake quite a bit. So I have our adjustable measuring spoons. These are great. What's not great though is when somebody forgets that they're in the sink and one of these little jobbies goes down the garbage disposal, or the whole thing goes down the garbage disposal. That does happen sometimes. But anyway, these are great because you can measure anywhere from a teaspoon all the way down to 1/8 of a teaspoon without having to use multiple spoons. But also we have this set. They're stackable, and I love this because they actually snap into place so that they're not just willy-nilly all over your baking drawer, wherever you keep your tools. I need all the help I can get to be organized. So these are much newer than the adjustable measuring spoons, and of course I have a set of both. And just depends on what I'm using as to which one I like to use best. But I'm finding more and more that I'm using these more often. Okay, so 2 teaspoons baking powder. Add that to our bowl. And then it's calling for 2 cups of milk. So again, I'm going to use our Easy Read measuring cups. You can still see the measurements on that side. But if you look, well, mine's full, so obviously you can't see it, but I can keep it on the counter and pour the milk in, and I can see exactly where the measurements are supposed to be. So again, you're not standing on your head when you're trying to measure. I'm just going to pour that in here. Thankfully, I chose the right size mixing bowl. You know, sometimes I have a tendency just to use a bowl that is way too large because I just am not sure with the new recipe what it's going to look like, which is always better than ending up with a bowl that's too small. Cast iron back over here so you can see it. And we're literally just going to pour this over the top. And we're going to throw it in the oven. Again, if you see any of those clumps in there from the gluten-free flour, and if you're not using gluten-free, that's good. You don't have to worry about it. Just try to catch those as they come out. It's gonna be delicious. When Emily gets home from work, she's gonna have fresh peach cobbler. Having salads for dinner, so of course, with salads, why not have peach cobbler for dessert? That makes perfect sense to me. Okay, so that's all ready to go. We're going to pop it in the oven for, it says 30 to 45 minutes, but it says it takes longer in cast iron, so it's just until it's golden brown and it looks like it's crispy. So I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes. I'll check it, and then probably we'll add 10 minutes or so onto it, but you can just listen to my fabulous hold music for the next 45 minutes, and then I'll come back. I'm just kidding. I'm going to stop the video. I'll start it up again. I'll bring it back when it's done. Alright, we're back. This is not a wardrobe change. Well, it sort of is. But I'm getting ready to go to my remote office, aka the golf course. That's where I work these days. But I wanted to show you peach cobbler as it's coming out of the oven. This looks amazing. Ooh, this will be great. By the time we get home, it'll be set and cool, ready for dessert.